Yeah, Minister, I too want to raise the issue of Dublin Airport. Just 2 months into the pandemic, Dublin Airport Authority announced the redundancy programme. And it was a gun to the head kind of programme that was announced. It was obvious that some organisations used the pandemic to cover for, as a cover for a restructure and to reduce costs, and Dublin Airport Authority falls into that category. Despite Mr Phillips' insistence that the DAA were desperate to hire security staff, its initial recruitment guaranteed just 20 hours. People had to be available for 40 hours, but they guaranteed them only 20 hours. That's gone to 30 hours now. At €14.14 an hour. And this is a job with significant responsibility. They had to be available over weekends. That €14 is for, shift premium and all is built into that €14 in these flexible contracts. Is it any wonder that the airport has a shortage of hundreds of staff when they offer those kind of terms? And that has to be part of this discussion. The kind of flexibility doesn't allow people sufficient to pay their rent, childcare or whatever else, and certainly with that kind of flexibility you couldn't have a second job. After you met with the DAA back in March, passengers were advised that they should be at the airport 2 hours for short haul and 3 hours in advance. Today it's 2.5 hours and 3.5 hours, but if you want to put a bag in, it's another hour, and most people do. So you're really talking about 3.5 and 4.5 hours. Another element of this, what I would describe as a fiasco that has flown under the radar now, is the fact that Dublin Airport abysmally failed an EU security audit some time ago. Officials from the European Aviation Safety Authority tried to smuggle dangerous items such as firearms, knives, improvised explosives through the airport. Of the 10 smuggling attempts, 7 were successful. So do you have confidence, and what have you been told about the absolute guarantee of security? What evidence have they given you? And I want to, when you met, and I've no doubt yourself and Minister Hildegarde Naughton met with the DAA, but what did they tell you? What was the discussion about? Was it a discussion about, delays? Was it a discussion about recruitment? Did they talk to you about the payroll problem? What was the substance of the issues that you discussed with them? What assurance did they give you? Did they give you the evidence of how they were going to, resolve these issues? And indeed, what did they tell you in relation to security and how they can guarantee that what happened in relation to that security audit won't happen again?
Discussed on a daily basis. Today, for example, we're meeting on a daily basis. It's what's happening in the airport today and what is the resource situation. This morning there was 13 lanes open in Terminal 1, 10 in Terminal 2, and times, while not in the ordinary manner of the way an airport works, nothing like the scenes that had been seen previously. So we do need to check on a daily basis at this moment in time to make sure that the public are not inconvenienced. That's the first most important thing that we're discussing every day. But it is primarily, has been, about how we build up, get in the staff and the resources and deployment of them. And that has been the key issue, not just in this sector, not just in this airport and others, but it's the training and making sure that those people were in place has been the key issue, going right back to March. As you said, the original redundancy had occurred 2 years previously in the spring, that first few months of the COVID pandemic. And no one knew then what the future of aviation was for long periods through that whole period. There was real concerns as to whether our airlines and the airports would actually be able to survive. Government, what we'd also discussed on an ongoing basis, is the provision of supports for the airport, particularly the regional airports who were further and worst hit, but also Dublin Airport, to try and make sure that we get through the crisis, where aviation disappeared for 2 years, in effect. The numbers went down. Since that time in March, it has been an absolute razor-like focus, though, on the resources, on the training, and the deployment, and the staffing. And as I said, up to last weekend, it looked like, well, it's incredibly tight, and it is still tight. The reason why Dalton Phillips in the committee yesterday wasn't able to give absolute cast iron guarantees is because we're still in a very tight situation. There's some, 50,000 passengers today, 45,000 tomorrow, 49,000 on Sunday, 50,000 on Monday. They're counting those because the resources are not yet back to their pre-COVID numbers, and our numbers are not yet back. They will be very shortly, but in this tight intervening period, that's what we talk about, as to how can we make sure we manage through this difficult period. And we will do that by throwing everything at it, by throwing additional staff, by bringing staff up from Cork, by looking at a whole range of different options and further options as needs be. Can I say the wider issue? And you've had a long record in discussing these issues about working conditions or the nature of work practices, the whole ethics or ethos. I think we do need to look at all this just-in-time kind of contract arrangements for workers towards creating much more stable, much more certain working conditions so that we hold on to people, so that we don't have to employ new people, so that we can get the best sort of working environment. Dublin Airport can and has been and will be that. But I do think we need to look at the industry across a broader perspective as to the sort of practices from keeping it very tight margin, tight timelines and everything.
Minister, work tight time, I think.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Minister, you did address the issue of security, and would you address that when you come back? Because this is an important job, and there's a significant amount of training required. But I honestly think that one of the issues that is going to be central to sustaining the airport into the future is the quality of the employment. And what is being offered, where somebody has to be available for 40 hours, over any 40 hours in a week, over any 40 hours. They could be Sunday, it could be a Tuesday, it could be a Friday night. What kind of quality of life is that for €14 an hour? And that has got to be addressed in terms of the future sustainability at the airport. I mean, there were other issues like filthy toilets. If people are going to be 3.5 hours, 4.5 hours waiting, places for people to sit. I mean, it's, you know, even in this chaotic time, you know, that kind of thing is just unacceptable. And very often it's the last thing that people recall when they leave the island after having a holiday as well, or after doing business. So will you address the security and the job issue, please?
Just on security issue, the point is well made and publicly acknowledged, so it is a real issue. It shows one other thing, that the training and the getting the right people and the skilled nature of this work is very real. Like, one of the frustrations in weeks and weeks had been people who've gone through the training process but didn't eventually make it to get the job. And at a time when we were short, every number mattered. It's like, God, come on, would you not just, kind of turn the blind eye? But you can't on security. You have to make sure it's a highly skilled, highly demanding testing job, not just that scanning job, but that's the critical pinch point, but also even just how you interact with the public and the respectful way. If you're going to have to search someone, body search or whatever, that has to be done in a really skilled and careful and experienced manner.
It's not yellow pack.
No. And that's why you can't just turn around in an instant and say, oh, we'll get everyone in. You just let go on. That doesn't work in aviation. Aviation works on the most secure systems, that nothing is left to chance, that you have to the highest protection levels. That's one of the reasons why it's been difficult for the airport to get the numbers in the timelines we needed.
Thank you.